The purpose of us being here tonight is to discuss a little bit about the Blood Endowment Fund. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So first of all, what is the Blood Endowment Fund? It was established by a local couple. You may have known them. I noticed when I presented in the past that certain council members actually knew the Bloods. But anyway, it was established almost 30 years ago by the Blood family to help the library provide access to books and other sources of information for the patrons of the city of Kaysville. And then, so originally it was part of the city library. And then in 2006, when the city joined, the city library joined the county system, we've been using that to off and on throughout the years. So more about this is money that's used to enhance the collections that are housed at the Kaysville Library. They are not, we're not using them as substitute money to, so for example, our collection development manager, she divides the money as evenly as she can amongst the branches, and this is just kind of a supplement to maybe get a few more items that Kaysville wouldn't normally get just because of the limited funds that we have for everybody. So these requests come from the interest that's accrued on the principal. So the principal itself is never touched. And I think Dean included a slide later, or a part of the information that there's like $35,000 in interest that's available. So we call this, so when we treat the books and materials that are purchased with the Blood Endowment Fund a little bit differently than we do in the rest of the county. A lot of times if an item hasn't been used, or if we get a lot of items for the demand, for example, a John Grisham book, very often once the demand has died down, then we have extra copies and we end up selling them at a book sale. These are a special collection. So the way we take care of these is we hold on to them when they're no longer worthy of going out. We'll replace them, but we will not put them in the book sale. We treat these items separately. We send a list, used to be quarterly, and then the pandemic hit, of items that are from this collection that when we call them deselected, it's basically we're just disposing of them. But we will never recycle them or anything like that because we don't want to give the appearance that any of the money that we would have gained from a book sale or from disposing of it through recycling, that there would be any money that goes back to the county. So we try to keep it as separate as we can. So obviously you know who's on the board, but the function of the board is to approve these fund requests and then receive annual updates and reports. And then I've been a deputy director for 3 years now, and before that I was the collection development manager, so I've been involved with this for 4 years. But, and so for the first 2 years we were asking every year, and then COVID hit, and so we try to ask for a request every year. So. And then just real quick, just some of the past requests. The last one we asked for was in 2019. We spent that on children's materials and also some young adult materials. In 2018, we spent it all on just children's titles that were purchased through Overdrive. And then in 2017, I guess they had let the capital build up a little bit, and they had spent, or I'm sorry, the interest was built up. So they spent $50,000 on physical materials and then $50,000 on electronic items. So So to date, since 2006, there's been $280,000 spent from this fund. So it has really helped. I can speak from experience. In 2006, I was the first branch manager of the sorry, I've worked at all the libraries. So if I slip up and say something, I apologize. But I was the first branch manager of the Kaysville branch. So just right across from us here. So in that time, we've spent nearly $300,000 and it's gone to good use. One of the cool things, and this is not on a slide, but is that Kaysville residents have really embraced the new library. It was fairly busy in the old location, but once we moved to the new location, expanded collections, got the building bigger, it consistently is our second busiest branch. So the current request we have for today is we'd like to request $20,000, and I have it broken down here by the collections. You'll notice the last one is e-audio, and in the past what we used to do is we used to do not just electronic, but we would also do physical audio materials. But we're finding that our audio selection is starting to dwindle because the industry is stopping. They're not making as many discs. And of course, as you know, new vehicles don't know what CD players are, and these little kids that are just born will never really know what a CD player is anyway. So that's what this is. And as you can see, we have it broken down. So we want to do a little bit with the adult collection too. We know that the Bloods were very child-oriented, but we think that that some of the adult collections could do just a little bit of refreshing themselves. So.
Okay.
And I don't know, it seems kind of silly to read the slide, but but anyway, so.
I have a question.
Sure.
What was the initial donation amount?
You know what? I don't know.
Oh, I was just
And
curious.
I did not see Dean here. So Dean has been here every time. So I don't
We'll
know
ask
how
him.
much.
Okay.
I even looked at the original document that the Bloods had signed with the city, or at least the copy we have with the library, and I didn't see an amount, so I'm not sure.
Okay, we'll find out.
Would it be the 689,000?
Oh, maybe.
Do you think it was the original 690,000?
I don't know. See, what I'm thinking, and this is just me,
690,000 would make $20,000 in interest.
so I'm guessing it may have started at, well, I don't want to say 250, but I'm thinking not more than 5, because, you know, we can only request what it earns in interest. So I'm assuming whatever we don't ask for in interest just goes into the.
That's why.
Okay, I want to know what they're investing in.
Me too,
because
that's what I was thinking.
I'm
That's
sure
a
not getting that
huge
kind of
return.
interest.
Anyway, same thing,
They've
that's,
asked Dean that before too, and
that's what I was
he
curious about,
hasn't
but
Crypto.
come for it.
not one. Right,
My
exactly.
my crypto's done well. That's right.
All right, thank you.
Sure, so if
Didn't mean
you
to.
have any questions, you have our contact information. By way of introduction, I'm going to have Ellen stand just real quick. Ellen is also a deputy director. She is more directly over the collections and things like that. She's a former Kaysville branch.
I think you're
Branch
right.
manager,
I think
nice.
that's what it was.
Thank you.
And Sarah
We're reading what I remember reading.
is the current branch manager at Kaysville. So I just thought,
Great,
in
thank
case
you.
for some reason they decide to put me out to pasture,
Okay.
you'll know who it is. And I've also included the 2019 report, which
Thank you.
I know we don't have time to go through, but just kind of reviews what we spent that money on. So.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions or?
I actually have a question. With the e-audio, I do that a lot more lately, like this past year. And I'm just curious, are you able to see the demand come in for the e-audio as far as people requesting books or having books on hold, and use that information to determine how much to invest?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So for the last few years, we kind of kept it not stagnant, but I mean, you know, we're not increasing the money in the collection.
Yeah.
But we are seeing huge lists. And it's not just the e-audio, there are e-books. But, and I don't know, let me see, okay, a couple minutes. But I don't want to get into the politics of the e-books. But most of the e-books now, we're finding that you can only rent them. And you don't buy them, you have to rent them again after a certain amount of time or a certain number of uses. So we feel like the e-audio is the way to go because most people do it to commute,
Yeah,
Yeah.
so.
that's what I do. So I was just curious about that.
Is it okay if I ask you a question?
Of course.
So I was wondering, on the e-audio books, and it doesn't matter either way, I guess, I'm mostly just trying to satisfy my curiosity. Are they only available to residents from Kaysville, or once you buy them for the e-audio, they're for the whole?
So they're good for everybody,
Okay.
yeah. But there is a way you can search them on the app. We have them as part of a little collection on there.
Okay, yeah,
So
I've
if people
seen
want to
them on
see,
there.
oh, what was purchased by the endowment fund, they can look it up.
Okay, cool.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, well, thank you so much for coming. Oh, yes? No, okay. Thank you for being here. We appreciate your presentation. Okay, board members, do we have a motion to adjourn?
We got
So
to have a
do we-
motion to pay them.
Do we have,
Oh, whoa. Do we make a decision on that right now?
I think we would want to look for a motion to
Oh.
have this,
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Request
okay.
approved.
I thought we were
I'll
talking
do
about
that.
this in the budget meeting. Okay,
Yes.
go ahead.
I'll
And
make
then
a
it will do
motion
that,
that
sir.
we approve the $20,000 from the Blood Endowment Fund for the Kaysville branch of the Davis County Library for the items they've got listed.
yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Councilmember or Board Member Oaks.
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you. We have a unanimous approval. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Hear a lot of good things about the library in Kaysville, so thank you.
It's fantastic.
I'll
I
make
do.
a motion that we close
read.
the Library Endowment Board meeting.
Do we have thank you? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, John. You did it.
I don't know. I was too.
So funny. I wish that we were on that flight. That was dumb. That was so, I don't know why, I think it was full. When I tried, or maybe not. Probably. I don't know, because we would have done a direct. Didn't you? We did, yeah. We switched it just 2 days before.
It was packed. There was not
Okay.
a single seat.
Because we would have taken that. I hate having layovers and stuff.
Maybe we were singles.
Yeah, maybe so. Interesting.
Our plane was so packed coming home too, they asked everybody if they'd check their bags, you know? I did, I was glad not to have to haul it around.
Yeah, it's true. It's kind of a
I
pain
just
to
said,
have
hey,
to.
take this, I don't want to throw it, or I don't want to throw it around.
Good evening. We want to welcome everyone to the Kaysville City Council meeting for March 17th, 2022. Thank you, Mindy. Thank you so much. Okay, we have an opening provided by Councilmember Abby Hunt.
Am I supposed to stand up?
You can do whatever
So
you
bad.
want.
Okay, all right. Well, tonight, I just wanted to start with a quote from Helen Keller. And she says, "Alone we can do so little, together we can do so much." And this past 4 or 5 days, we, as a council, went to Washington DC for the National League of Cities conference. And I kind of want to pair that up with something that I saw when I was at the Holocaust Museum there. I hadn't known this before, but I learned that the people of Denmark were able to smuggle approximately 7,200 of their 8,000 Jewish citizens to Sweden, where they were given asylum. I don't remember everything that went into it, but I assume that there was a lot of teamwork and cooperation. And I had a meeting earlier at my daughter's school for the community council, where we talked about the growing need that the students have to experience togetherness, and the togetherness they had before the pandemic. I think it's been a tough 2 years on our community, our state, our nation, and even the world. So I guess with all those things in mind, I just want to say that I love Kaysville. It's the best community I've lived in. And I would encourage anyone who's watching and all of us on council to remember to do whatever we can and continue doing what we can to bring our community together, because together we're stronger and together we can accomplish more. And together we can forge the community that we need to be resilient enough to weather any of the storms that may be coming. So with that, why don't we stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that, Abby. That was fantastic. All right, we don't have anyone signed up to speak, and so we will move forward with our presentation and awards. I want to first turn the time over to Jerry Goodspeed from the Utah State Department, what?
Is this not people saying?
No, those are just people attending. Yeah, Utah State University Davis Heritage Festival.
Thank you. I direct the Botanical Center here in Kaysville. And some of you are aware that the fair, the Davis County Fair, was eliminated. And so we felt that a community event was still in our best interest. And, you know, as was mentioned, we believe in community. And so we're taking over. I'm sure a lot of you remember our baby animal days. So we've kind of stuck that in with what we're going to call the Davis Heritage Festival. And I wanted to make everybody aware of it and answer any questions that you might have on it. I have just a little flyer on it so that you're aware of what's going on. And I talked to the mayor earlier, but we want to be Kaysville. And we want to be a part of Kaysville, and we want to help Kaysville any way we can. And I personally live in Kaysville, so we thought that this Davis Heritage Festival was a good way to get some of the people from outside of the city, but also within the city, to come and enjoy. We'll have baby animals again. We kind of melded them together, if you will. And plus, when I say it's a replacement of the fair, it's not, because we're not doing carnivals or rodeos or demolition derbies or what I term monkey shows, and it probably offended somebody with that. But what we will be doing is having demonstration. We'll have from Davis County the local heritage museums there that'll be talking about each of their city's history. We'll be talking about, or we'll have demonstrations on the past, such as how you used to make quilts, tatting, all of those types of things, plus how it's done in the future. We'll have libraries there, the county library system that'll be having stories for children, so we wanted to make it a family event, and then the food trucks. So that's kind of where we're at. It'll be May 19th, 20th, and 21st. And we really appreciate your support, and we hope that it is a good thing for Kaysville. And just as a couple other things, this year it will be in our field, but we are building an indoor arena. That'll be a community arena for people, and indoor and outdoor arena, what we're calling the Agricultural Heritage Center. And we should be breaking ground for it, and I'll make sure that you're aware of that within the next 2 months.
Oh, good.
Awesome.
And then one other thing, I just have to throw this out here. So contrary to popular belief, the Botanical Center actually doesn't really generate, or doesn't get any money from the university itself. We get a little bit from the state that pays about 1.5 salaries, and that's about it. So everything else we do, we generate ourselves. The gardens, building them up, taking care of the ponds, everything like that is kind of what we do. And we have a membership program, and currently the membership program is about $35 a year for an individual. Currently we have about 400 members. We have 4 from Kaysville. So, and yet Kaysville is the place that uses our facility more than any place else. So we're going to start pushing that, and I would ask if it's okay that I would love to have the Kaysville City Council become members of the Botanical Center. And if it's okay, I will work with Shane to get that done, if that's right. And I will give you 1 year gratis so that you're familiar with what we do and the discounts we get and the activities that we have. If that's okay with you all. If it's not, I'm probably going to do it anyway.
Okay,
It's awesome.
that would be great, thank you.
You bet. And well, again, we really appreciate your support. And can I just give these over here?
Yeah, and will you share with us social media posts and stuff that you have so that we can share that, share that information and help you
Posting to somebody.
get the word out?
What was I doing now?
I was just going to ask if you have social media type posts that you can share with us so that we can make sure we get the word out.
We have quite a few, actually.
Okay, good.
With the Botanical Center. And the other thing is, if you hear of anything, we could really use some volunteers for the Davis Heritage Festival.
Okay.
So that's the one area that we're a little short in.
Volunteers for what? Just to
Just
keep
to
things
help
in
us out, take tickets.
Like booths and stuff? Okay.
Band booths.
Okay.
We've got pretty much all the animal stuff taken care of because our 4-H youth do that.
Okay.
Which is great that we have. I mean, this is a really good event because our youth participate in it and the youth do most of the work. And it's a fundraiser for them and for the Botanical Center.
I think it'll be great. I'm looking forward to it.
Good, I'm glad to hear that. Any questions or any comments?
I just have some questions, because when you said that you get no funding from Utah State, the university does not fund it, because they built the buildings where, they've got the gardens on the east side, then they built on Seagull Lily Drive, the other building, then they've got the other one that's on west of 50 West, and then they've got the demonstration house.
Yeah,
Are those not all part of your,
they all are.
and all those were not built with Utah State funds?
They were built with Utah State funds, but there's no O&M for them.
Oh, okay.
So I take care of all the O&M for them. And, yeah, basically, the university pays 3 salaries, and then the state pays 1.5.
Okay.
So I'm paid through the university. I'm a full professor there. And we have Sheridan Hansen, who's the extension horticulture agent for Davis County, is housed there. And then we have a couple of part-time people that they help pay for. But that's it. And everything else, whenever we build gardens, whenever we try to expand, which we try to do, we try to make it grow and have a beautiful place for Kaysville City. But yeah, that's stuff we generate ourselves.
Do the students still come down and work on their projects here?
No, we don't.
You don't?
Only the ones that attend Utah State University, Kaysville. Occasionally, we'll work with them, and that's about it, yeah.
I have a quick question. Our family used to donate horses to the training program, 2-year-olds, and then they would get trained throughout. Are you planning to do training at the
So
facility, the arena here?
we haven't gotten everything worked out. I talked to earlier about we would like to start some equestrian therapy programs there. Is that kind of where you're headed? That's,
I mean, I was just thinking, like, there's so many elements of the equestrian side of things I'd love to see done.
that is one thing I really want to push. I have a daughter that's been affected with mental illness and some traumatic experiences. And so, to me, it's kind of a personal thing, but I would love us to start to develop a therapy program there, not just with horses, and this is the other thing I have a passion about botanical centers because of nature. I mean, we have a 7-acre arboretum with 400 different types of trees there, and we expand it with the demonstrations of the edible gardens, the urban farm, trying to make sure that there's a place where people can go, and especially the arboretum that they can go and get away. And I know that some people have talked to me about that and how much they appreciate it. And we want to leave this 100 acres is what it is of green space.
Awesome.
And develop it for those types of reasons. Yeah.
I just also want to mention, Abby mentioned that we were in DC, and I sat on the airplane ride. I sat up next to a official from the Bureau of Reclamation. He's a high-up official coming here, and we probably spent 2 hours talking about water and the drought and the seriousness.
Just 2 hours.
Yeah, and he mentioned several things to me that were quite alarming. And I know this year the state legislature has really been pushing putting meters on homes and reducing our usage of water. And it's starting to get to a very critical stage. And I think, this is a great opportunity as well to educate our community, myself and all of us, about ways to reduce water, especially in our gardens, and with water-wise plants and trees and things like that.
I couldn't agree more. If you come over to the Botanical Center, we do have water-wise areas. Most of what we do is drip systems. We use a lot of natives, and then we have a plant introduction program where we go and we bring native plants into the landscape, and we eventually introduce them into the industry. So yes, and if you follow, we have a Garden Guys and Gal Instagram and Facebook and stuff that we continually try to work with explaining water to people. Plus, just all of our websites have a water element to them. In fact, that's our number one. I mean, stormwater goes into those ponds. That's Kaysville stormwater. A little bit of Fruit Heights. And so it's goes onto our property, and then it gets better when it leaves our property. So that's water quality that we talk about, and then water quantity is what you're talking about. So right now we have a park strip demonstration showing you the difference between Kentucky bluegrass and other grasses or other plants that reduce the use of water just in a park strip by 90% to 100, so yeah, I agree, and we are working on that.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I was going to say, I know that my family and my neighbors and friends and stuff also want to learn about planting and, what grows well. And so you have classes for things like that, right?
We do. We
Okay.
have many public classes.
Expanding our gardens.
Yeah, that's our point is, and right now we've set aside a little bit of money. We raised a little bit for signage so that we can have more signage, so that when people walk through and we're not there in the weekends or evenings, then the best way to educate somebody is actually to have them educate themselves.
Right.
And so as they walk through, if there's some signage and some things that are teaching them about either water quality or water quantity, how much and how we can better do it,
Okay.
that's the best way we can teach people.
Okay, thanks. You're a great resource, so we're excited.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Drop by. Come
Okay,
talk
we'll
to
come
me.
visit.
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
thank you.
All right, thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Okay, now we have a presentation by our Fire Chief, Erickson. Please come on down. Okay, go ahead, Chief, and then we'll circle back. Okay.
Mayor, council members, city leaders, residents, thank you for your time this evening. I appreciate it. You happen to have the PowerPoint, please? Thank you. Perfect. This is just the overview, what we're going to talk about. This is our 2021 data, responses and things that we have done. I talked to the mayor today. Our annual report is done from 2021. I'll probably send it out tomorrow or in the next week or so, and you can look that over. A lot of things that we've done this year, so it's been a great year. It really has. Next slide, please. There we are, as far as the fire station square footage. That's how many firefighters. You'll see the number. That's not the 22nd or the 15th of May, but in May, how our numbers are going to go up. As you well know, going from 3 full-time captains in 2016 to where we are today, it's been very good. Next slide. Those are our vehicles. We did order a new command vehicle. We're converting mine over to our medic rescue. We ordered it in July. It's in production line as we speak, and delivery date another 3 weeks. So that's just been that and radios. I don't know what's happening with that.
Back ordered.
Oh, it is. We ordered our radios in July and just got them a couple weeks ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's been a tough road on a few supply chain things. Next slide, please. That's how many classes we have on our annual training plan, to include medical classes. We load up our classes in the first year for all of our medical classes so they can get their CMEs needed to recertify every 2 years. So it's nice. So if they miss some things in that first year, they'll get them back. But
That's great.
it's been going really well. That's how many inspections we do a year. Really didn't get much in the public education with everything going on. We do plan on our open house in September this year. So we plan on moving forward. It might be the first week of October. We just got to look at the calendar. But to have that back in the fire station, I think it'll be very nice.
Yeah, that'll be nice.
So we missed out on a few things, but we did bring things to, we made a video with the help of PD, and we sent it out to the elementary schools. And if they do call, we will go out and make a visit. So that's been good. Next slide. There's all things that we do for health and safety, as far as our safety meetings. I do invite, if any of you want to come to one of our safety meetings, they're usually, we're going to move them to 8 in the morning, so we catch the shift change, so we catch on and off going. But if you would like that invite, I'd be more than certain to get you that invite. Shane, Scott, and Nick are on there. They come from time to time. We just talk about any safety issue that is in the fire station that's currently out there as far as a trend. We talk about, you see the near miss reports, we talk about near misses that happens in our profession that happen more times than you think. A near miss can be something from somebody nearly falling off a ladder, getting hit by another vehicle, or it could be something as simple as dispatch not answering us 3 or 4 times. That could be a near miss because we might need that dispatch center and we're not getting answered. So, and then the firefighter safety stand down is every June, about the 3rd week of June every year. Next slide, please. These are our fire response districts that we respond to. So 15 areas. We break our city into 15 different areas. Next slide, please. So that's what we've done the past few years as far as responses. We stay pretty consistent, believe it or not. We have been 64% on EMS for the past 3 years.
I want to know how you fight fires and kill it.
Very well.
You gotta be careful. Gotta be careful because of the backdraft, right?
Yeah.
Right.
You
Good
beat
job.
me to the punch. Dang it, I had that.
That was good.
Pretty consistent as far as our responses. We ran this way. A little odd though, as you can see, almost 300 calls more from 20 to 21. We do have a property just to the north of the city that we run on quite a bit. That should be fixed next month, so that's a good thing. We have dropped down on our response to West Kaysville. We were consistently the past 3 years at 18%. We dropped down to 16% this year.
Oh,
So
that's great.
next slide. This is our NFPA standard that drives our times. So I just throw that in there for you, and then the next slide will say where we are at. So on all of our calls, 9 out of 10 calls, we need to be on time. That's the national standard. So that's what we strive for. Next slide. There's our areas where we're not so compliant, and you can see that 45% number at the bottom right of the page. So that's all of our calls. NFPA standard doesn't give us the luxury to take away alphas. Alphas are calls that we stop at stoplights. We follow all road rules, if you will. So when you take those out, next slide, please. When you take those out, we're at 78%. So I just thought out of fairness to show, even though the standard doesn't allow us to do that, I think in all fairness, alphas really shouldn't count. So alphas and mutual aid are taken out of there. You can't expect us to go into North Layton in 6 minutes from here.
Right.
It's just not right. So that's why I just wanted to show that. Next slide, please. So here's our day of the week, time of day. Pretty, again, you look at the times, pretty consistent. Maybe 2018, you can argue 6 in the morning to midnight, but all of them are pretty consistent. And you know, if you look for the past 4 years at least, Tuesday and Wednesday are pretty good winners.
So weird.
But Wednesday pretty consistent. Next slide. COVID impacts. We stopped all our tours, as I stated a little bit early. We canceled open house. Very fortunate on the COVID side. Very, very few got it. Matter of fact, the crew on today is the ones who'd had some members get it. But we've tested quite a few people over the past couple years. so it's been good for the community. I didn't talk to my boss yet, Shane, but we are going to volunteer to be a home testing site. We won't test, we'll just have the home tests at our station, and they can come pick them up.
Oh,
So, yeah, the health department, if you didn't know, April 4th-ish, they're closing them all down. There won't be any testing sites. We don't even have to report negatives anymore.
okay.
We only report positives, so pretty good thing on that view.
Yeah.
Next slide, please. If there's any questions, please. ARS money, we tapped into about $90,000, which is a good thing. Really happy with the AEDs partnering with Stryker and RPD. So we have 22 AEDs. They're on all the patrols and the RSO vehicles. So it's been a good thing. Next slide. I don't know if any of you know this success framework. Do we want to do that anymore? I've kept it on there since the very beginning. It was
You'd be the only
Governor's
one,
thing,
but
several years ago. So Shane wanted it on
I
our
remember
slides
it.
to talk about it. I don't even know if it's a thing anymore, is it?
I don't think the state still does it. but-
It doesn't anymore?
Or at least not formally and calls it this.
Right. So I've left it on there if you're wondering what the heck success framework is. Next slide. Anne Marie. She's a fun. Daniel, she put that on there for you, buddy.
That's a great picture.
No, I did not. I submitted that picture. But that's all right. Any questions?
Council,
Well, at least he wasn't wearing a kilt.
Yeah, exactly. That's good.
So since we won't get you back here for a while because we have one meeting, I believe, in April, and it's a pretty full agenda. So May's coming up. Will you please explain to us exactly how and when the paramedic program will start full-time for us?
May. The only outlier on that, and that's a good question. The only outlier on that is we got an individual graduating, because he's in a different program than Weber State. He cannot officially take his test until 11 June. But we have enough paramedics to cover. I think we're going to be fine. And then it's all about having the vehicle. But I think we're still going to run them out of the ambulance. So mid-May is our goal, where we will not need Davis County Sheriff anymore.
it's fantastic.
So coming from 27 July of last year when we got approved our paramedic license, it's been great. We have, how many paramedics do we have on today, Ryan? Let's say, we have 2. Counts James as a half. But yeah, we've been very fortunate. We have at least one on duty since July. A lot of times we have 2.
That's great.
The county really appreciates you. Don't know, they're required to have 8 a day, and they just can't do it. They're struggling. We know it. So we've really worked hard together. Clinton came online doing the same thing. Syracuse is coming online April 1st. Correct. April 1st, Syracuse is coming online doing the same thing. Farmington came online doing the same thing. North Davis did. So the only ones, I think that's about it. And Syracuse will be the last. So as a
Okay.
county, we'll be able to. And it's been good for the sheriff's office, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because if they can keep somebody out of the south end of the county because we're loaded up with paramedics, put them in the north. Because Roy's been coming into the cities a lot. Layton's been going into Clinton and Syracuse very often. And it just hurts us all. Another rescue got put in. When did they start that, Ryan? January 1st, Layton? Correct. January 1st, they put on another rescue. So they got 3 paramedic rescues on. South Davis put on a 4th one, so they have 4 on. So it's been pretty good for us.
So do you think
That's great.
mid-May then you'll tell Davis no longer do you need to include
Yeah,
yourself
but
in
they're
the stacking? You
still-
just do us
Correct. And they're still on the hook, though.
Till
for the
August, aren't
county
they?
Until December 31st.
December 31st.
Correct.
Fantastic.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
That's exciting.
It's great for us.
Yeah.
Very exciting. We actually, Colton Basin, he is a paramedic student on his rides right now, so he's riding for us. The end of this month, he'll swap We have a paramedic riding with Salt Lake. We have 2 of them riding with Salt Lake, and they'll swap, and then they'll come to us.
Oh,
So they'll do half their rides in Salt Lake and then half the rides for us.
So how
So it's good.
confident are you that you're going to get your truck?
Yeah, good job, yeah. I don't know.
I don't know. They put everybody back another
They do.
month.
Well, here's the
And so
thing
I don't
as
know.
well, and I don't want to belabor this, but it depends on when it gets off the truck. So if it gets off the truck first, it's where they park it, it comes out last.
right.
And that math just doesn't work. So it doesn't matter, we'll have a vehicle, whether it's the back
Okay.
vehicle that they run out of, it doesn't matter.
So you're going to, no matter what, you're going to do it?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm excited to see these guys doing that.
Yeah.
I know they waited a long time. I know a lot of the firefighters, I may not have been the same thought process, but I always knew it was coming, and I always thought it's where it should be, and I'm glad to see it coming, and these are the right guys.
Yeah. No questions. Thanks, Chief. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate you all being here as well.
Thank you for the support, appreciate it.
Thank you. It's great to see the support. Okay, we're going to circle back. We did have someone signed up to speak, but it was in the lobby, so apologies there. Dwayne, you have 3 minutes, and we will not interrupt you. We will just listen. So,
Understood, thank you.
Okay.
Hats off to our fire department. I hope that I never see any of you at my house.
right, exactly.
In a work capacity, anyway.
Good.
Thank you for the time to come and talk again to the city council. Appreciate each of you. I've spoken a little bit to our community director about the Flip Your Strip program, which I came and talked about a couple weeks ago. I had some more thoughts on that. I left them on my phone at home, but I can remember. I'm hoping that the council will consider giving our community development, our planning commission direction to work on working with Weaver Basin to adopt and qualify for the program. We just heard from our great neighbor here with the botanical gardens, thank you. And I saw everybody nodding their head when he said we are really working on water conservancy. My hope is that the council will lead out on that. I fully realize that Kaysville City does not manage any of our secondary water. We don't really have skin in the game, you could say, as far as the city goes, as far as managing that water goes. But I really, truly believe, yes, Kaysville residents will do the right thing. Kaysville residents are very, water-minded, I believe. They want to do their part. But that doesn't mean that the council can't give direction and leadership to the city. I believe if we qualify for the program, that would send a clear message to our citizenship that you're serious about it, about Kaysville doing their part. It's not so much about the money that I mentioned last week. It's really kind of a nominal amount, but I think qualifying for that program would send a clear message to our citizenry that we are serious as Kaysville doing our part. I believe on the agenda was for our, we are supposed to talk about that a little bit, giving direction to the planning commission. I think they're a little hesitant to go forward without some direction from you. So I hope that's the direction that you would give. And so that we can show everybody we're serious about doing our part. I'll do it anyway. I think there are a lot of people that will. The incentive would be nice, but again, I think that's that clear message that we're leading out and doing the right thing. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much. All right, declaration of conflicts of interest. Does anyone have anything to declare? No?
No.
Okay, great. Then we will move on to the consent items. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes of March 3rd, 2022?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from March 3rd, 2022.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Councilmember Blackham.
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you. Unanimous support there. Okay, now we'll move on to the work items, the Flip the Strip program discussion. And I'll turn the time over to our Community Development Director, Melinda.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to start off today to just let the council and the public know that there's great news. There's nothing stopping you in the Kaysville City ordinances to remove turf from your park strip. We don't have any landscape requirements that would prohibit them from essentially installing a waterways landscape in their park strip. So I would say, however, there are a lot of homeowners associations in Kaysville. So the recommendation is to check with your HOA to see if they have requirements. But Kaysville City does not prohibit any type of landscaping, nor do we require any type of landscaping. And that, in the park strips, I should say, there are certain landscape requirements depending on the zone of the city. The business park has certain landscaping requirements, but none of those requirements include turf, sod, grass, or anything like that. So the good news is that any resident out there can go ahead and be a very good steward of water, and they can change out their park strip. They can change out any landscape they have on their entire lot if they wanted to completely xeriscape or remove any grass, any type of landscaping. So next I want to just go over the goals that Weber Basin Water Conservancy District has for the benefit of the public. Weber Basin is the wholesaler water provider that then provides water to that sources the secondary water, the irrigation within Kaysville. We do have 3 different irrigation companies in Kaysville. That is where we get the secondary water from. So there have been some programs put in place, and as a caveat on, I guess, the front end of this conversation, there have been a few bills that were passed at the state legislature this past session that will impact even an HOA's ability to require turf and landscaping. I'm not too familiar with how that bill will work or how that legislation will work, but this is something that is on everyone's minds, as it should be. And another bill was passed that would prohibit cities from requiring any type of turf, a certain percentage of turf. We don't require that, so I would say technically our ordinances are in compliance. And then there also was, I believe, $5 million set aside at the state level that would most likely be used to fund these types of rebate programs that we'll go through here with Weber Basin. The state is still sorting out the details on that, so we don't know yet exactly how that program will work. But the intent is to try and, the intent is to have all of the water conservancy districts still be the ones who are, I guess, authorized to use those funds to reimburse and rebate property owners for removing turf. So at the large level, the large viewpoint of what they're trying to accomplish, there's 2 things here. One, they're trying to allow existing homeowners or property owners to participate in turf removal programs or water-wise landscaping programs without being in conflict with local ordinances. And again, as I mentioned, Kaysville doesn't have anything that would prohibit a property owner from doing that. And then secondly, they are trying to hold new development to a higher level of using water and landscaping responsibly. So the tricky part, and it'll be interesting to hear the council's dialogue on this because it wasn't here last fall when some of this was discussed. But the tricky part is that in order to be eligible for the $1.25 per square foot rebate that Weber Basin offers, they require a local municipality to adopt an ordinance that then supports their goals and would meet these minimum requirements. This isn't all the requirements, and I tried to kind of summarize and keep this as succinct as possible, but to give a good idea of how in depth what those requirements are, It covers everything from no turf or overhead sprinklers in areas that are less than 8 feet, or with 8 feet wide, sorry, or a slope that is greater than 25%. For new development, and this doesn't count for, it's everything excepting single family, but for new development, they don't want turf grass to be greater than, or it has to be less than 15% of the total landscaped area. For single family residential, they want us to require that the grass area would be less than 35%. For commercial spaces, they want the turf area to be less than 15%. It would require drip irrigation in areas where turf grasses are not utilized. It's a more efficient way of watering to use drip versus sprinkler to, to get the water source to each individual plant versus a sprinkler that sprays an entire area. They want to have each irrigation valve irrigate similar landscaping. So if there's a similar slope, similar soil condition that's required, or similar plants, they want to have all of that streamlined. There is a requirement that lawn and plant beds would be irrigated on valves separate from turf, and any landscaped area that's a planted bed and therefore not turf would have to be covered by a minimum of 3-inch mulch. And they then would also want us to have portions in the ordinance that would encourage smart irrigation controllers and allow for water-wise landscaping. So there's, I think, about 40 different cities that Weber Basin provides water to. Of those cities, only 4 currently have adopted ordinances. So Layton has, Washington Terrace, Riverdale, and Clearfield just adopted an ordinance recently. Clearfield's ordinance requires that each homeowner submit a landscape plan that has to be approved by staff. They also require all new development to have each single-family residential permit plan submittal have a landscape plan that then would have to be approved by staff. I don't believe Layton has a similar requirement, but one of the biggest questions from last year when the discussions were taking place was how does this work in Kaysville with the staffing and the resources that we have? And as the director of the Community Development Department, that's certainly my biggest concern.
Sure.
From a personal standpoint, this is something that I absolutely support. This is something that I will do at my own home this spring or summer, and something that's, I think, critically important. And so wanting the council to know, like, fundamentally, I support this. I think it's a great thing. But anyone can do this right now. The question is, does the council want us to go in the direction of incentivizing, I guess, at a monetary and the rebate level versus just hoping people will be good stewards of water? According to Weber Basin, there's a number of other cities out there that are currently in the middle of midstream of adopting. I know West Bountiful will have their ordinance at their planning commission within the next couple of weeks. Syracuse is looking at this. I'm trying to think of some of the other cities that he mentioned, but there are a number of other cities that are looking at this as well. So how that applies to each of them, and I think there has been back and forth between those entities and Weber Basin trying to say, hey, look, here's what our community feels like, or our organization feels like they could work with, just to kind of set some expectations of, like, Clearfield has, I think, 3 full-time planners, a community development director. They have 2 full-time code enforcement officers. And so they are a lot more able and nimble to administer a program like that, where there is permits or plans that are required to be reviewed for compliance and then permits to be granted. The other thing that I wanted to mention too is just as an aside, I was speaking earlier today with a city manager in another Davis County community, and he said that his public works crews were out in a neighborhood the other day and noticed that a resident was digging quite deep into the park strip. So their crew stopped and asked them what they were doing, and the homeowner said, well, I'm going to connect my irrigation into the culinary water because they're not going to turn the water on this spring, and so I need to water my property. Good news in Kaysville is that is not allowed, it's not legal. But just to set the tone that there are people that just don't care to be a good steward of water. I would hope we wouldn't have any residents anywhere in the state that would do that, but clearly we do. I certainly would hope that we wouldn't have any in Kaysville. But to just kind of say, right, like we have one resident here that's saying, hey, I'm going to do this regardless of what you do. I'm going to do this at my own house regardless of what the community that I live in, what they adopt, because I think it's important. But we have people out there who have a completely different sentiment. And so, you know, does something like this where we go through the process, we get Weber Basin on board with an ordinance that meets their requirements and satisfies that, and something that we can support and implement and regulate within our own organization, you know, there's some fine lines there. So that's really all I had to have for as far as presentation. Love to answer any questions, but mostly just wanted to hear what the council's thought was on a direction to proceed with this.
Okay, thanks, Melinda. I do have a question. So what's the reporting back to Weber Basin look like? Do we submit a report that shows who's qualified if we decided to do that? And
So we would work back and forth with Weber Basin to make sure that the ordinance that we end up adopting would be, I guess, acceptable to what their requirements are. So,
okay,
And then the people have to sign, the people,
Councilmember Adams.
yeah, there are
peop-
additional steps.
yeah, then the people have to like go to a class, you have to like go to a class and you get the money from Weber. So after we've adopted, correct me if I'm wrong, but after we've adopted the ordinance and qualified as a city that is qualified under it, then all the onus is put on the resident with Weber Basin. We then are off of the hook. We don't approve, you know, once they've flipped their strip, we don't go in and check the box, right?
So that's part of what I'm not necessarily clear on, because Weber Basin also doesn't necessarily have the staff to go and do field checks and compliance and monitoring. But yes, there are additional steps. So it's not just that we adopt the ordinance and then a resident's able to go and get reimbursed. Weber Basin does have certain requirements, and essentially you have to have a living park strip that's in place. If you flipped your strip several years ago, you're out of luck. You have to be able to submit a plan then that meets their requirements. You do have to attend a class. I know that they have a water conservation garden up at their facility. You have to attend a class, and then you have to sign an agreement with Weber Basin that states you'll abide by, I guess, the approved plans and the ordinance. And then Weber Basin actually has been recording that document against the property, so that any future homeowners would not be allowed to come in and undo the water-wise landscaping that had been done. To date, I believe Weber Basin said that they have processed about 200 applications, and I had it in my notebook, but I think that they have reimbursed about $80,000. They have another several reimbursements in the queue, and of course this is for all of the areas that they provide water to. They're hoping that this, you know, part of the $5 million that the state has allocated will come back to them, and that they can perhaps ramp up some of their resources and some of their ability to assist with these programs. In talking with John Perry with Weber Basin the other day, he's a little concerned if we adopt an ordinance right now, depending on what the state does, we may have to make changes to an ordinance to make it make sense based on the program that the state has yet to set up. So there are definitely a number of steps. The $1.25 per square foot is not going to cover the entire cost of a project. I think that, on average, they're saying it may cover half, depending on what you put back in. And then one other thing to note too is that on average during an irrigation season, a park strip would use, up to 10,000 gallons a season. So anywhere between 8 to 10,000 gallons. And another thing too that I wanted to point out, Clearfield City doesn't have a secondary water system, and so all of their watering is done through their culinary water. So they do have a lot more of an incentive to try and regulate the landscaping use of culinary water. And certainly, like, water is an infinite, there is not an infinite resource, and you need to be responsible of that regardless. But when you do have a community that doesn't have secondary water, that is definitely a lot more incentive to try and limit the amount that's being used outdoors.
Anyone else?
So if you go back the list of different items we're talking, and I'm personally, I'm thinking of my current, irrigated on separate valve, that's easy, but you're talking drip lines everywhere when you already currently have spray. Are they asking us to go and change those out, or is this grandfathers, or what?
So right now, the only program that Weber Basin is looking at is a turf removal in the park strips.
Okay.
Depending, again, on what the state does with this funding, they may expand in a couple of years to other areas of a property. But what they would want is to have turf removed from all of the park strips and drip irrigation installed for any vegetation that was there. And they
I think
would,
maybe what Perry was asking about was when you were given this list of the requirements, yes, it's only for new construction.
Only for new
Yes.
construction? Okay.
The
Yes.
ordinance that we would have to pass to qualify would require these things only for new construction.
yeah, thanks for the clarification. So,
Well, yeah, because my next question
Yeah.
is, you're obviously grandfathering in most every other, existing home. You'd almost have to.
yeah.
Unless Mindy wants to go check them all. So, okay, no, and I don't mean to be, well, I guess that's who I am.
Councilmember Oaks, if I could answer that, they would certainly be grandfathered in. We couldn't go back and require that they remove landscaping that was approved previously. But if they wanted to qualify for the rebate, current residents could go back in, I believe,
Yeah.
retrofit their yards, put in the drip irrigation, and then qualify for the rebate. But we couldn't force them. We're not talking at this point about forcing them, and it'd be questionable anyway if we could go back in and do that.
And sorry, one more thing, previously converted park strips also would not qualify for this program. if they've
Right,
already
I
done
thought,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
interesting. Clearfield City posted on their Facebook page about their Flip the Strip program, and reading through, I read through not all the comments, but quite a few comments, and there were some real snarky comments from people that were upset because they flipped their strips last year and are not eligible for that. There, were people that were saying, like, why should the city tell us what we can and can't do? And then you had people who were excited about it and wanted to participate in the program. So, I think really what the philosophical discussion that the council and mayor should have tonight is, in the end, do we want to approach this from a point where we're incentivizing through the rebate, or your incentive is just you want to be a good steward of a resource that's, you know, in a drought time? Or is it something that we just say, you know, it's something everyone has an opportunity to do right now, and that's enough? So do we incentivize it? Do we not? And what does that mean?
Any other questions or comments?
Mayor,
Abby?
may I? So we talked about how these are for new developments. In order to qualify for the flip your strip, the house doesn't have to do all these. The city just has to adopt this ordinance, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes, because we don't have an ordinance that meets these
Right.
specific requirements.
Okay.
Weber Basin says, sorry, any Kaysville resident, you are not eligible.
Okay, good. And then I just have one more question. You talked about, you know, maybe waiting until the state has worked out all of the changes they made. Is there any indication on when they might figure that out?
They thought they might have a little bit more information on direction the first part of April. So, I mean, I think soon enough that it's something we could incorporate into a process that we're looking at, right? We would have to take drafts to the Planning Commission. We'd have to get them ready. That'll take a period of time. We have to notify for public hearings. And so I think that's something that, you know, that we could maybe incorporate in, but we don't know. And it could take, you know, it could take longer than what they're anticipating for all of that to be determined.
Okay, thank you.
I just have a few comments. I mean, and John, maybe you can remember some of this. When we talked about this before, kind of one of the, and we're all for water conservation and saving water. But I think with the House Bill 242, where they gone through and said, we are now going to require meters be put in all of the secondary systems by 2030. And if you don't have it in by 2030, you're going to get fined $10 for every one. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but to an irrigation district, that's a lot of money. And right now, we're paying somewhere in the neighborhood around $300, and it's limitless usage, you know. And what they're saying is they think the meters are going to create a lot of conservation. And people, and I think we all saw, based on what we asked the residents to do last year in September, that people were pretty compliant. They were conservative. They understood that water was the problem. And we also didn't want to put the onus on the city, because the city doesn't have the staff for this. We don't have the staff for it. Or the resources. We're not saying it's not a good program, but because of all the requirements that they had to adopt it didn't seem that their ordinance fit Kaysville City. We felt like with the meters coming in, people are kind of self-regulating themselves because they understand that it's not an unlimited resource. And it is something, the incentive was Davis Weaver. And we don't, but we do have to have people here to manage, and we don't have the staff for that. And I like the fact that we run lean here. I really do. I mean, as taxpayers, we all benefit from the city being able to run lean. I think the meters are going to make a big difference. And I know any new construction that goes in now, they install the meter. They haven't actually started reading them yet, but they're going to, and it won't be long, and you will be paying based off of that. I think that alone is going to create the incentives for people to flip their strip. You know, when you're talking 10,000 gallons of water that you're not going to have to pay for every year, you're going to, you know, that savings is going in your pocket. And I think it just felt like there was, with the restrictions that they had to have in order to adopt their ordinance, I know that the council at that time did not feel comfortable about it, wanted to see how these other programs would work out and maybe cause the saving of the water that we're looking for. That's kind of what I remember.
Can I make a comment? You know, let me follow up on that. I just know in conversations with neighbors, I mean, my wife and I have already decided that this year there's no annuals, and we're probably not going to replace any perennials, and neighbors are doing the same, and that's a big deal. I mean, you know, for my wife, that's a huge deal, but, you know, to not, and it's going to save me a few $100s, but, and effort on my knees. But I agree with Councilmember Blackham that, you know, I think the water, they've already said it's not going to come on until mid-May instead of mid-April, so it's already a month later. After last year, we're having discussions. You're seeing people are saying, hey, this ugly brown lawn I have now, get used to it, because it's going to be all year. There is a lot of self-regulation. And I had neighbors who, last year, shamed, I mean, it was sort of a shame if your water was too on, and they would come over and say, hey, what do you think? And not to me, but I think with the work that's gone on in the state, I think it'd be silly to move anything to adopt right now any ordinance or have work until we understand more. That's my thought.
And I would like to add to that a little bit too. Mike, you bring up a really good point, House Bill 242. I mean, this is going to be significant for the entire state, and it's going to be a very costly expense for every single city. And right now, the state is saying for cities that are ahead of the curve and really jump on this, they will likely get a lot more help from the state to put meters on all of our homes. But for the cities that kind of delay, that money will run out eventually. And I'd just like to point out too, I mentioned this previously, and it's something that I think all of our residents need to pay attention to. And, you know, we all like to get rebates for the good work that we do, but essentially this is much more severe and beyond doing just for a simple rebate. I mean, this is something that's going to affect all of us. And I saw in the news recently that Lake Powell has about 35 more feet before there's not enough water to produce power in the hydroelectric power. And that's going to create major issues, power outages and whatnot. And so I think the writing's on the wall. And one thing I'd also like to point out is when they say that our snow average or water average is 90% of average, that usually sounds pretty good, but average is the last 30 years. And we've been severely declining over the last 30 years. And so I do think this is a real issue that we need to get a handle on. And I do have some concerns as well about this program. And the only reason why I say that is because our city, we're going to have to put a lot of resources and energy into this House Bill 242 and installing meters. And I think we're going to also have to put resources into educating our residents as well. And I wonder if that's the reason why perhaps the state hasn't made it very clear because of this bill, because essentially the money that people will get in rebates, that money could really be used to help all of our cities and municipalities to convert over to these meters. And so I do have a little bit of concern, but I absolutely agree that we all are in this together and we all have to change how we've been watering our yards for the past 30 years. So,
Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry. I guess I just want to say, I was on the Planning Commission when we looked at this the first time. And so I've looked at it a few times now. And I understand the staffing, and I'm not sure how to solve that issue, but for me, that's really the only issue that I would have a problem with. I think that in order, yeah, metering's great. Metering by 2030, it's 2022, right? So 2030 is 8 years from now, and even if we're putting in meters at an incredible rate, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 5, 8 years before we're on board to be able to water this or meter this. I went up to the reservoirs. It was disturbing, to say the least, to see how much water was up there and to realize that there are people out there who are watering every day, twice a day. Yeah, all of us probably are not, but there are still those people. There are going to be people who are trying to hook it up to their culinary water, who are trying to water multiple times, who have puddles of water on their lawn. And I think that in addition, we talked about education, but I think part of this program is education, that people have to be going to the classes, they have to take pictures before, during, and after to prove what they've done. And I think as individuals are educated, they'll educate their neighbors, you know, hey, I did this, hey, you know, it's not that bad. Because I think one of the huge barriers to becoming more water wise is, I have no idea what plants look in, xeriscaping's ugly, but there are better ways. And so I think that this program can be good for education, actually. I mean, I guess I feel pretty passionately about this. I think metering, of course, is the way that we will eventually solve this problem, but I think that if, as a city, we can find a way or figure out a way to implement this, this is going to be the change in mentality that, as a state, we need to do. We can't keep saying that our turf is our status symbol. We can't keep saying we're going to put turf in. We need to change the entire mentality and see new developments where these percentages are the norm and say 35%, that's really low. We need to have that become the norm in the new area. So I think if we could find a way to be able to do it, I think we should.
Okay, thank you. That was good. I have a question. So it sounds like we're in favor of obviously communicating and obviously conservation, but we know we don't have the staff to support it. So is there a way to write an ordinance that puts the responsibility for all of the reporting back on Weber Basin? So we have an ordinance that complies, but we direct people back to them. So basically, they're going to have to report to Weber Basin at some point instead of the city. Is there a way to do that, or is that just one of the requirements that the city double checks?
So the requirements don't necessarily say that the burden is on the city.
Right.
But they're requiring, but we are the regulatory agency
For
involved in all
okay.
of this. And so
Okay.
there is no other, I mean, do they now become part of the plan review process? You know, when a building permit's submitted. It's logistically, unfortunately, really the only person that can play that role is us as the regulatory agency.
Okay. Right. Shane, go ahead.
Maybe just to add to that, I shared Councilmember Blackham's concerns when we addressed this last year. What's given me a little bit of comfort is that I just don't think a lot of people are going to take advantage of this this program, which then in turn doesn't put a huge burden on the staff.
Okay.
So I guess from my perspective, I think Linda did a great job of explaining what the staff position on this is. I just don't find it to be, and I don't think it's going to be overbearing, because I don't think a lot of people are going to do it because of what you're looking at here on the screen. And the class. And so maybe it does send a message that we are in favor of this without having to do a whole lot. But maybe one other thing I wanted to say, we are very concerned about the cross connections. The culinary, I think if there's any silver lining to this late start, early finish to the irrigation season, it's that we can better see who is watering when the water's not on, the secondary water's not on, who's watering with their culinary, and we can check out those connections, and we are going to be very aggressive about that. I just wanted you to know that as a council.
You know, and I want to make it clear that I agree, Shane. I agree, Shane. I don't think the actual, I wish that Davis and Weber Basin or whatever would just say, you flip your strip, we'll give you the money.
Yes.
But they didn't say that. They said, you flip your strip, we'll give you the money. But the only way we'll do that is if your city adopts this ordinance right here. And this is what the enforcement part of it is. If you figure you do 100, 200 houses a year in Kaysville City, somebody has to be responsible and make sure there's only 35% turf, and if somebody complains about it, and then somebody has to go look at it. That's where the problem becomes. It becomes a very time-consuming for the community development department. Plus they have to follow up, they have to approve all the site plans, then they have to follow up to make sure it was done. If there's a complaint, they have to follow up. Once it's in black and white, it's yours.
And that's totally true, and I think that's why, personally, I'm supportive of us not doing this, because that's the concern. But when I look at the Weber Basin and what you have to take a class, I just think for $1.25 a square foot, most people are not going to go to that trouble of taking a class, filling out all these applications, taking pictures, doing all that. It's just not going to be worth it. I don't think $1.25 is going to cover even close to half of what it's going to cost someone to flip their strip.
Well, I can tell you right now, thank you so much, Mr. Klein,
Yeah.
for all the hard work you've done and informing us. And I think that I just want to say I agree with Mike. I don't like that Weber Basin is telling us what kind of ordinance we're going to need to put in place. I think it's ridiculous that they don't just do the program for anybody who's willing to flip their script. But I imagine that you feel the same way. In fact, talking to you, I think they should make it easier for people to be able to do that. Maybe that's the route that the state will go. My recommendation would be that we don't move forward with writing an ordinance based off of what Weber Basin says we do. I think that we can look as staff and figure out ways that we can adjust and change our ordinances the way that we see fit. Maybe helps conserve water without following their bullet points.
Can I make one more statement to that?
No, you can't, sorry.
Yes, you can.
Oh,
And I just want to throw this out there just to, it's more of a question to all of us, because sitting here thinking about this, I mean, I see both sides. My biggest concern was, do we have the resources to hire enough people to really regulate this? And as I was sitting here listening to Councilmember Hunt and everyone's arguments, either for or against or concerns, you know, this is something, I kind of shifted a little bit, and we're almost built out here in Kaysville. And I'm wondering if, even though this isn't a kind of a perfect set of standards, if we do adopt it, yeah, there probably won't be a lot of people that take it up because the fact that we're almost built out. But I wonder if this option is presented to new home builders, the rest of the areas that we can build out, if it may, like Abby said, encourage people and educate people to actually change the way they landscape their yard. Maybe they won't qualify for this, but they will go in that direction. And so I do think that's a positive way to look at it.
but it wouldn't be an option. See, what they're saying here is that we would have to adopt an ordinance that requires any new homeowner to have to follow these guidelines. So our city would require you to do this regardless. There's no rebate. They don't get money. That's just, the flip the strip is totally separate. It's if we want to be a flip the strip city, we have to make an ordinance for all new homeowners. This is the requirement. So that would mean that, you know, you're building a house. It wouldn't be like, oh, you can sign up for this. It would be, you have to follow these guidelines with your landscaping.
Oh, that was a misunderstanding on my part then. Okay.
So
And
no,
that changes it for me
It
too.
changes it, right?
Yeah.
Because it just kind of makes it seem like, oh my gosh, which again, I think that we should be thinking about ordinances that we maybe should put in place for new builds that does conserve water. But we should be looking at that as staff, as a city, what things that we feel like we can manage, not what they're telling us we should do. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I did look up just a little bit of rough math. Math is not my expertise, but 15% of space, and for a quarter acre lot, that's about 1,500 square feet, 1,600 square feet of grass. And so that is a pretty small space.
It's a small space. And no, I mean, it's,
You know, Weber Basin,
Oh.
when I spoke to them, said that they would negotiate this list with Kaysville City. It doesn't have to be 35%, it could be 50, whatever they were able to work out with Kaysville City.
Thank you. Okay. So was that a motion, John, or?
I say motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, will you restate it, please?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Say the motion. My motion would be that we not move forward with an ordinance to be on the Flip the Strip program.
Second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Councilmember Adams.
Oh, I don't know what the
You can-
terminology is. Can we add in addition to that, potentially, in my addition,
Friendly
That would be a
amendment?
A friendly amendment?
Uh-huh. Or a
I
substitute
appreciate that. A
motion?
Or a
substitute motion? Yes, do that motion, but to leave the door open to discuss this with the Weaver Basin, just to see which bullet points, if possibly all the most of the bullet points, how flexible they would be.
Okay, so your motion was to not adopt an ordinance right now, right, John?
That's correct. And for staff to go through the process of creating an ordinance that matches up with Weaver Basin's qualifications.
Okay, so would that be a friendly
I don't-
amendment or a substitute motion, Nick?
It sounds more
That-
like.
I don't know that I think if you want to give us the direction as part of your motion, just
Okay.
to
Get more-
interact with Weaver Basin and say, how much of this is, if it's drastically different, we would want to bring that back to you and say, look, they've changed this from, 15 to 30, 50% or whatever.
Yeah, I would accept that substitute motion if you want it, if you feel comfortable visiting with Weaver Basin on how, I mean, I'm comfortable with staff figuring out, my direction would be I'm comfortable with staff trying to look at this and
Well,
figure
I
out
don't
if
think
there's.
staff would make the decision, but I think we can definitely coordinate together and say, this is substantially different. I think the council wants to see this, or haven't really changed anything at all, and we're just going to leave it alone. And we would just let you know that that was the
Do you feel
result.
good with that?
May I ask
Oh,
a
yes,
question?
Barry.
So what's against, staff looking, what kind of ordinance would we want to do for Kaysville? Why do we need Weaver Basin? Why do we need their money or their funding or, for something, if we're looking at water-wise, if we're looking at potential cost, water saving, conservation down the road for new homes specifically, what would preclude us from doing something that would, I don't know.
I think we would do that. I think just today, we wanted to know specifically about Flip the Strip, because our residents
Got it.
are asking, people are asking, we want to say, we're not doing it, or we are, but we will definitely, would love to bring you back something here that makes sense for us.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Mike?
That's why I think staff's always looking at different things, and I think staff's always looking at new things and whatnot. I don't think we need to leave it in a motion, we just need to decide whether or not. That's why I like John's.
We'll do that
original-
regardless.
Yeah, we're gonna do
Okay.
that.
Aye.
Okay, so, all right, so we have a friendly amendment to the motion, right?
Yeah.
Do we need a second on that?
You do.
No? We already have a
I
second.
think
We have a
Mike can just
second.
see if he
So
still
you
wants
just
to
agreed
second
to
it.
it? Okay.
Seconding.
You okay with that?
No.
He's
It's-
not
This
okay
is
with
what you
that.
said, we'll just look at it anyway, so.
You're not okay with a second on the friendly amendment?
No.
Okay, all right, so that motion, do we have someone that wants to second that motion? The friendly amendment?
If it's not an amended motion by Councilmember Adams, then it should be a substitute motion by Councilmember Jackson that you can then address.
Okay, okay. Councilmember Jackson, will you restate your substitute motion?
It is to say, to not do this as it's written, but to go back to the Weber Basin to see if we can alter some of these points to fit Kaysville better.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Can I ask a question before there's a second, or do we have to have a second first?
I think you have to do
I think we need a
second.
second first.
We don't have a second?
It dies. Go ahead,
Okay, so
Rich.
that motion fails. We'll go back to the original motion. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Now we'll vote. Councilmember Hunt.
Nay.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Can we make a comment, though?
Yes.
I hope that more people do flip their strip. I'm planning to do mine as well, and I don't like them handicapping us to tell us what we can and can't do as far as for new developments. I think that at least I've made that clear. So I
Okay.
want you to know how grateful I am for all the hard work you did.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. I was just going to say, obviously, this is really important to us as a city council. Conservation is very important, and I think we need to make sure that we're communicating to our residents that how important it is. And so that's what I think we should work on moving forward, as well as looking at an ordinance that does encourage additional conservation. So let's make sure we do that. Okay, moving on to council member reports. Does anyone have anything they'd like to report?
I do.
Councilmember Oaks.
Speaking of water conservation, we met with folks from Kaysville last week on the 8th, Cole and Shane and I, about a pool. So, like I say, speaking of water conservation. And I don't mean to be flippant, but I said that earlier. But they were very, I think we were all very impressed with the amount of research they had done, talking with folks from, I believe it was either Springville, Spanish Fork, South Davis, and Washington, on rec centers that have been put in there over the last 4 or 5 years, and the cost. This is something that, and we talked to them about, when you're talking budgetary items that need to come forth, you know, you get a 1 to N list, and where does something like this fall? And we haven't done that work yet. But, and they understood that. Their belief was that the desire was large enough in the city for a pool/rec center. And they were well prepared, and were given the information to Cole for him to study and have a better understanding as well. So just want to pass that along.
Thank you very much for that. Anyone else? Anything to report? No? Okay, well, we did have a great event. We were able to attend the National League of Cities event as a council, and it was fantastic. It was very informative, and it was an opportunity to spend time together and to meet our colleagues from other areas as well. So that was fantastic. Oh, yes.
And can I comment to that as well?
Yes.
You know, it was a great experience to be in DC and to attend the classes. And I have to say that a lot of classes and information, they were geared towards cities with problems that we just don't have here in Kaysville. And so I think we are very fortunate to have just good government here and lean government, and we have great citizens, residents. And so I just wanted to throw that out there. And it was a great experience overall. So we have some good information that we can use to apply to improve our city.
Thank you very much. Okay, Shane.
I just want to remind the mayor and council about the next meeting, which will be on April 14th. It's a little different because it's not the first Thursday, it's the second Thursday. We're hijacking Planning Commission, and just keep that in mind. We got quite a while in between meetings. It'll be it's already a very full agenda, so I'm sure it'll be quite a long night. And then the next day is the budget retreat. So we're going to be ramping up for some exciting things the next couple of weeks.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you for that. Let's see. Okay, does someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. Thank you. Now, we are going to open our meeting for the Kaysville Business Park Architectural Review Committee meeting. Let's see, I will turn the time over to our Community Development Director, Melinda.
Thank you. We have an application before you this evening for consideration of a new building that would be located at 1213 Flint Meadow Drive. The business that exists right now, Reading Horizons, is wanting to do some expansion and add a new 8,943 square foot building that would essentially be warehouse storage. They have submitted plans, and here's just a brief view of, the location. As I said, 1213 Flint Meadow Drive. The next slide will just show you, outlined in red is where they are proposing to put this new building. The proposed building, again, it's nearly 9,000 square feet. There is also on this rendering the future proposed addition to the existing building. They are not wanting to move forward with that project this time. It's just the new building that fronts out on Flint Meadow Drive. The parking that exists there is adequate for the proposed building, and if they do expand in the future on the existing building, there should be adequate parking for that expansion as well. They are proposing similar, if you want to move on to the next slide, this is just a floor plan of what would be in the building, mostly storage. They would have a restroom. On, I think it's the north side there, they would have a loading bay and a loading dock. And then they are proposing, if you want to go on to the next slide, the buildings would be essentially using the exact same architectural materials and colors that they have with their existing building. Let me see. So this, the existing building is 2 stories. This new building would just be 1 story. The applicant is here tonight if there are any questions, but they're seeking approval from the Architectural Review Board tonight. And if you have questions, I can answer them, or the applicant can try and
Hey,
answer those
applicant,
questions.
will you come up to the mic, please, and state your name for us? And then if anyone has a question, they can ask you directly. I guess, first of all, will you tell us a little bit about the project?
Sure. Yeah, Tyson Smith.
Tyson Smith, okay.
And yeah, we've got a couple of trailers sitting out in front of our office space right now because we're out of warehouse space. When we built it, we thought we'd be able to go longer than we have, but we've grown quite quickly.
That's a good thing.
That's great.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good thing. Especially since when we grow, that means more kids learn how to read.
Right.
That's right.
And so we're just out of space.
Are you a production facility, or?
Yeah, we publish, so that
Okay.
inside the building, there's some book coiling and things. We
Oh,
don't do a
okay.
lot of printing there. Most of the printing is done elsewhere. We coil. And then
And
most
then
of it's
ship out.
office space. We've got
Office,
somewhere
oh.
else, a lot of office. We have software developers and curriculum writers and sales and marketing people.
That's fantastic.
This spot
You're
that
growing.
you're using, is it, oh,
Sorry, go ahead,
This-
Councilmember Adams.
this spot that you guys are
Board member.
building, it used to be, it currently is grass?
It's currently grass.
And it's currently water?
We're gonna flip.
So
that.
were you hoping that we would flip the strip?
No, I'm just
This
saying, like,
9,000,
I'm gonna remove, how many gallons are we gonna remove from this system? by
Thank
taking
you.
all the grass out of
Thank you
there?
for that.
that's a good thing. Yeah, I think it's awesome what you guys did. I did a little research about just sort of your program, and it's great program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And then we've grown, just this last year, we more than doubled.
Really?
The size of our footprint after 38 years.
That is
So to
fantastic.
double.
In
yeah,
1
it's-
year.
It's growing quickly.
Yeah.
So we'll probably, in fact, I just turned to the builder and said, maybe we should look at adding that other piece of office. A lot of our folks are hybrid now, or remote. And so the office isn't as pinched as the warehouse space, but we may come back in a few months and say, that we cut out some more grass
Good.
on the west side and put in some office space.
That's great. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Just some questions. So will he still maintain his requirement for landscaped areas once he does this?
The landscape requirements, there's, if I recall correctly, there is no requirement for grass. There is,
Just landscaping?
yeah, I'm going to just go ahead and say there's a really odd requirement of 30 trees per acre.
Yeah.
I think that has to be a typo.
No, that's it, I think.
That seems pretty extreme. I don't know
The
if
business
there's-
park had a lot of different
Yeah.
requirements.
We have a lot of trees.
Yeah.
A lot
We'll
of
probably meet
trees.
that now, and none of the trees that are there will be removed.
And I think it was a minimum
That's
10%,
something we might,
10% landscaping of the site.
Yeah.
And I'm just making sure, I mean, I want him to still comply with the requirements. That doesn't
Sure.
mean it all has to be grass.
Right.
I'm not saying it all has to be grass, just,
yeah, we can certainly, if you want to include in a motion of approval that they maintain the landscape standards, but that
Yeah.
would certainly be something that we would expect.
And none of the trees have been removed, and I think there will still be enough grass, even if we build the other section, there's still enough grass.
Well, not even we have the are able to violate our own ordinances, and it's, you
Yeah.
still have to maintain the 10% in commercial properties, and there's other requirements, but you'll be, it says it'll be 28 feet tall, so it'll look like a two-story building.
It'll be the same as that one.
Yeah, so even though it might be
Nice.
single, look big, and I think that's awesome that your business is growing. That's a neat thing. I like to hear that. I don't have any, I'd like to ask him a question, but I don't know if it pertains to this exactly. And I think Shane, I don't know where Shane went, but.
I know what I know what you're gonna ask. We can't do it yet.
Can't do it yet? Okay.
Well, maybe you can, try it.
I was wondering what your feelings were, since Kaysville City does not own that much property in the business park anymore. Do you like the fact that we regulate it, or would you rather see that turned over to the owners? To
As
do
an
these,
HOA,
as
sort
an
of.
HOA, basically.
Sure.
And that- you don't have to answer
Yeah,
that, but
I mean,
maybe
it's
think
interesting.
about
Yeah.
it, because in the, early on, Kaysville City did own all the property, and we did, we were kind of the president of the Owners Association, or whatever, but now, I don't know that, do we actually own any of the property there anymore, other than the park?
I don't think we do.
I'm wondering if, as an owner, would you rather that, still maintaining the standards that you have to maintain, because they're very restrictive. Would you rather that be put to the onus of the owners, or do you like it
Yeah.
where it's coming to the council?
Obviously. Us having more control, it would be better.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, there were some quirks with this, right? The way the business park has been developed the last 30 or 40 years has been weird. We found out after 2 years there that we had to have water rights. I didn't know. I came to say, what? I'm in a business park, why do I have to buy water?
Yeah.
And there was this quirky thing. The
Yeah.
guy that sold us the dirt, the city had given him some rights, and our contract said they were supposed to be transferred to us, but he didn't. Just some funny stuff, right, that you wouldn't expect in a business park. But no, to answer your question, I think, the more control we would have, the happier we'd be.
And the only thing that makes me hesitant towards it is we've had a lot of requests for people to do things in there that wouldn't even come close to meeting the standards of your building and what you've done and what a lot of people have done around you.
Right.
And that would be my only concern, but it would be a bigger concern because I would think it would be your concern
It is our
also.
concern.
And so I'm just interested to know if this is the right body anymore.
Yeah, or if we form something out there
Yeah.
where we have that controlling it.
And I
See,
know
and
that-
where I was playing devil's advocate with Mike about this was the idea that maybe, and whether or not you thought about this or not, is, having us be the bad guy.
Is that easier?
Is that easier for us to be able to, because people buy property in the business park, or they come and they want to put in gray stuff, and you would have to tell them as their neighbor, no, you've got to do this and this and this, or does that matter? Maybe you would prefer that, I don't know.
Yeah.
Something to think about,
Yeah,
maybe
something to think about.
talk
Just
to
think
some of
about
the
it.
other owners down there when you're out around.
It's true.
But that's one of the things that was, to me, when I reviewed this, that made me think, well, this isn't going to be a hard decision, is that you said you're going to match the existing building.
We want it to look nice.
For us, that's important for us, and we, like Mike said, we've had a couple of situations where people have come with things that don't look like they would be very nice, and it's important to us that those who have invested and made it look nice, that it stays looking nice.
There's a couple of weird-looking buildings out there,
There's a couple weird-looking ones.
Yeah,
But no, we'll make sure it looks nice.
yeah.
I'll make a motion that we approve the consideration for the 8943 square foot warehouse building for Reading Horizons located at Flint Meadows Drive.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Hunt. All right, vote. Board Member Jackson.
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, that's all we have on the agenda for this. Does someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you.